Hello and welcome to this overview of some new features coming up in Worldographer. We're in the process of adding a bunch of functionality from Cityographer, which is our older city mapping, city and village mapping program, and migrating that functionality into Worldographer with a newer interface and a bunch of other improvements, some of which you'll see in this demo. So to get you started, we're going to do a new city. We're going to make it a blank map because in this case we're going to hand place everything. Cityographer and the upcoming functionality here in Worldographer will let you generate a city where it will automatically place everything according to some settings that you give it, or you can hand place everything. And for our purposes today, we're going to be copying a module map, a village map from one of the classic modules. So we're just going to start with a blank map, and then I'm going to zoom out some so we can get more of the map area. And we're going to start by doing some quick roads, and for our purposes we're going to make the roads lines. We have a preset for some road settings. We're going to override it so it's a textured road with a rough stone look to it, which will give us a brownish color, and we're going to set it to that. And just I'm not going to be very closely copying the module map, but roughly we start up here and then we extend down like this, maybe about yay far. Then we come down a little bit more, and let me know when you figure out which module this is coming from. But I would imagine that a bunch of you will get it pretty quickly. Anyway, there we go, and then finally down to the end here. So that's our one of the roads, and then we're going to create another road, one that kind of starts out over here and just comes nope, I don't like that one. We're going to come up and then over. So there's just a little bit of a bend there that I wanted to get into this. And then we're going to create another one. In this case, we're going to, from this little bend here, we're going to come out and then up and then across, down some, and continuing across. And most of the map here is just a matter of going all the way across. Yep. And to be honest, this might be too much map area, but we can trim it later if we want to. So that's the main roads, and then we just have another spur or two to add in here. Deselect so we can start another one. Up here we've got kind of about halfway down, maybe here. Got a little bit of a road leading to one particular building there, and then another one like this, coming up and then down and across, and then finally back out to there. All right. So that gives us our roads. We got I can't really call it a river. It's more of a creek, but we'll go with those settings. And here we're going to give it a textured. Oh, I didn't want to do that. Let's go back to the texture rough stone light. Okay, so then start another one. Now we can change the texture to water. And for this, we're going to do it as a little bit thinner because for whatever reason, it might be the same. Let's make it real close. All right, as far as the width of the road versus the width of the river / creek. So we got the line set, and this actually starts over here, I suppose. Then we're going to come up a little bit, come out a little bit, come back up, and And again, this demo would take a lot longer if I tried to make everything match up perfectly. So I'm kind of just following things in a general sense. And then at this point, we kind of get a pond, if you will. So we're going to stop there, and we'll do the pond later. I am going to tweak a couple of things here. One is I'm going to give this a bit of a drop shadow with a smaller radius of maybe just 20 pixels, and with a darker color. And what that does is it's just going to give us something that looks a little bit more like a riverbank. Actually, I'm going to cut it back even more to 10 pixels. Yeah, so that just gives us something that looks a little bit more like a riverbank. I think that looks nice. So we got that, and then finally a couple more lines I'm going to do that will let us do elevations. So we don't have any preset for that. We're going to just call it an elevation with a tag, and tags aren't used for much other than kind of find, you can search for things that way in some cases. So we're going to use that. We're going to set it to a color. We're going to set it to black, but then we're also going to set the color to maybe about 40% as well for how transparent it is, the opacity. Save that, and then this gives us some settings that look good for an elevation line, and I'm going to remove that shadow effect and put in a different effect. I think that's what I want. Nah, let me delete that line. Let's make sure I get to the top here. Let's try again. I want to come across and then down a little bit, but then I'm coming back up. And that more closely matches. We're going to drop the drop shadow, but we're going to add a box blur of just a couple of pixels. And that gives us, what I think anyway, let me see. I think that gives us something that looks like an elevation line where you have a shadow effect where the sun, is giving some shade to a hill, if you will, or to, some elevation, which matches what we have here in the module. Then we're going to do another one. There's a second one here. Comes across, comes back real close there, then back out again in a little bit like that. And then we're going to do a third one because there's a building right around here, and this building happens to be on a hill. So actually, we're going to do that again because it actually gets real close to the river here. And then we pull away from the river at that point. So you got those. All right, so that gives us our lines, and so you can see that a lot of that functionality wasn't there in Cityographer as far as doing the semi-transparent lines, and a lot of the line editing options also for being able to move points and so forth are a lot better in Worldographer than they were in Cityographer. With that out of the way, let me go on to the features because this allows us to do buildings, and that's kind of what we're here for. So we go to structures. We filter by structures because there's a lot of different buildings in the tool, or a lot of different features rather in the tool. So this just helps us narrow it down to this. I'm going to change a couple of settings here. I want to be able to place freely so that we're not kind of bound to a particular box. And I guess I'll let these go for now. We'll just go with that one change for the moment. And assuming that, there we go. All right, so now I can place my building here. This is a nice church. Too nice of a church. We're giving you, there's about 50 building icons built into the software right now. There'll actually be quite a few more. There'll be upwards, at least 100, probably close to 200. before we release, just like what's in Cityographer. All the same ones will be there. And then we have icon packs that have others available, which actually lets me seg into the fact that we're doing a Patreon at the moment. We have been for the past 6 months or so. Keith Curtis, who does most of our graphics, most of our cartography, is putting out a lot of great new icons each month for us. And right now we have a set of Roman themed icons, if you will, and so we have city ones. That would be good for Cityographer or for this new functionality in Worldographer for making cities and villages, as well as we have ones that are good for Worldographer for world maps of the isometric style, which is kind of civilization computer graphic style, or the classic Mastara flat style map icons, or they'd be good even for World of Greyhawk style icons. And then we've also got Dungeonographer ones, and so each month we put out at least 15 of each of those 4 types. And do that through Patreon for a couple of bucks, for support each month. And also, though, the kind of the news that we just kind of announced today, kind of getting the word out a little bit more. But we put in a post that the Patreon backers will be getting this additional Cityographer functionality at no extra cost. It'll be a paid kind of additional license plug-in functionality that'll, it won't be too much. It will be less than certainly the full price of Hexographer, but it'll be something where you can get it through the Patreon for free if you're supporting us as of the point in time that we release this functionality, which should be, could be sometime next month. It could be 2 months, maybe 3 months out. I don't see it taking more than the end of this year. So if you want to sign up for that Patreon, then you'll be getting this the license keys for this new functionality as soon as we're ready to say yes, it looks good, and we can let everybody have a go at it. Anyway, going back to the building functionality here, this is kind of what we're here for. So that gives us our church, and then I'm also going to pick a couple of icons for some buildings. This has a small building here, and there's another house over here, and there's another one, let's say something like this, just for some variety, over here. And then we've got a couple of specific buildings. We've got a brewer. The brewer is up here on this hill, and then, which is way too small. And we're gonna let's override. Let's select that. Let's show selecting this stuff, and we're gonna override that setting, and we're going to say we want it to be 100 just for the sake of argument. That doesn't make much of a difference. So let's say we're going to go 130. Let's say we want to go 150. And we can also rotate these and even resize them on the map directly. Maybe I need to change that as well. And let's set this to 150 as well here. And yeah, now I can resize this on the map. Reposition it. I like that. Then we're going to do 2 more buildings. We've got a money changer around here. We're just going to use the shop icon for him. He's a jeweler money changer, and he is located here. And then we've got another shop on the other side over there, and let's go back to the select tool so we can kind of rotate them. I do like how much easier, and you're gonna like how much easier it is to kind of tweak the settings of things in Worldographer. As far as rotating, you can just grab those little handles, you can select them to move them. You can resize by pulling the corner ones, but this one here that's kind of along the circular area there allows you to do the rotation. So you've got those. Now I can pick this one here, and I can probably, yeah, okay. So it's going to want me to do this before we do that, and Get 150 here as well, and 150 here as well. And that might be too big for that kind of a house. So let's go 120 and 120. Oops, 120. Listen to what I mean, not what I say. Or listen to what I say, not what I mean. Which is it? Okay, so we got there. And same thing, we're going to override these guys here. And I want to just rotate that one. I'm okay with how the rest of it looks. This one here. So that gives you an idea of how easy it is to kind of place these guys. Oop, is that what I want? Yeah. So that gives you an idea of how easy it is to kind of create the map. Let me zoom in a little bit so you can kind of admire Keith's artwork, because we do make these so that they can be printed at good high quality. So even if you wanted to zoom in, you could print them and they would look amazing, and they do. So actually this one here, I don't like the dimensions of that one. So there we go, that actually works out a lot better, but I think I'm going to resize it down a little bit and rotate it. Yeah, I'm probably being a little bit too particular for the purposes of this demo, but there you go. And I want to select some other buildings. So what you saw here, oh, actually there is one other thing I want to do in there too, also with the shapes. Let's go back to the shapes tool just because. Let's do a polygon. Let's have it have no border, but I do want to have a texture because I want to basically this brewer, this road here is supposed to kind of come up around the brewers. And so that allows us to do that. And if I turn off the blur, then you're going to see that that matches up with that texture very nicely. So we're set with that. Yeah, so that's all pretty good. I haven't added any trees here. That would be the other thing, to add some vegetation and some fences and stuff. We have that actually as other features. If I just turn on all features and do, I don't forget if it's tree. Yeah, okay, so you got the tree clusters, and so we can plop down and we can put in some tree clusters. That size is not quite right, so I can change that, and I can make it, you know, 120. I can even make it 180 by 180%, so it takes up several. And you could plop down a number of those clusters and rotate them and put down individual trees and kind of, you know. So now that I've got one done, you know, you can see, you can then put this, and you know, the vegetation will just make the map look a lot better too. So that gives you an idea what you got. We've got the icon sets available for sale, like I said, through our store, as well as we're doing new ones through the Patreon. And then we'll have the Cityographer functionality also available to backers through the Patreon, as well as in our store once it's ready, if you don't want to sign up for the commitment. But each month you're getting, you know, like I said, at least 60 new icons each month for just a couple of bucks. Back to our buildings though. Let me just do structure again. It doesn't really matter. Doesn't matter which ones are showing, because what we're going to do now is, again, a lot of you have seen a Cityographer, know that one of the core key features is the ability to generate a whole bunch of data about the buildings. So here we can select this, and we can pull up the notes of that selected thing. And at this point, since there were no notes yet, it generated them for us. And it generated what services they have available here, and who's working here, who's living here, that sort of thing. So we've got a large staff for this cathedral, which, you know, kind of makes sense because this is a nicer looking church. But we can also change those settings, which we'll get to in a moment. But let me just pull up a couple more buildings. Here we've got our brewer, and if I pull up the notes of the selected, you can see who's working here and how much are their different products, what do they have available. So that's there as well. if I continue on with like this this shop here, we pull up the notes of this selected shop, and you've got a number of people that are working there. You've got 2 owners and a clerk in this case, and then you've got all the items that they have available. So whenever you create a map, when you generate a map, if you're generating it all automatically, it's actually generating all that data for you automatically as well. And when you're creating a map and placing everything by hand, it's creating all this data for you as well. And if you don't like what's there, you can regenerate the details, and it's going to go ahead and give you a new one. And you can also, this is fully editable as well, so if you don't want them to be considerate and sensitive, you can change their attitude, or you can change their names, that sort of thing. All that is part of the core functionality of the program. That's all driven from a new set of configuration data. That's this configure settlement data. This panel here controls how many buildings basically are going to show up, and where are they going to show up if you use the city generation of placing all the buildings on the map for you. So here you'll have these are the keys for all those building types. And so we had the brewery we saw there. So you can see here brewery, and how many of them are going to appear on the map is based on this number. So if your population is, say, 5,000 people, you're going to have 3 breweries there, because 4,200, you know, there'd be basically it's how many of these buildings will appear per a number of people. So if you set the population of the village or town to be 1,400 people, then you'd have 1 brewery. If you set it to 700, you wouldn't have any. If you set it to 2,100, you'd still have 1. If you went to 2,800, at that point, then you'd have 2 breweries. And so you can set the population to be 50,000, and then you'll get, you know, something like 30 some of these breweries throughout your city. And it does that for each of the different building types. It's also doing a key matching algorithm for which of these values apply to each building type based on the building's key name. So if it's a brewery, then you'll have then it will use this. However, if you have, say, there's a dwarven brewery, which is different than a brewery, well, you can add another entry here, add a new row that's dwarven brewery, and have the settings there that are different than the brewery. And so then if the map icon is named something dwarven brewery, then it's going to use those settings instead of the basic brewery. And then if there's another brewery that doesn't have the word dwarven in it, then it will use that basic brewery's stats. And then the same thing applies for building descriptions. So here we've got building descriptions, and this is what powers what data is generated about that. So sticking with the brewery example, here we see that in the brewery you'll have a person table with person information. We've got 1 brewer generally. You'll always have 1 brewer because there's a minimum number of groups of brewers and maximum groups of 1, and then 1 per group, 1 per group. Whereas with apprentices, you'll have a number of apprentices. And why are groups important versus just saying, okay, well, there can be 1 to 6 apprentices? In some cases, like for an inn, you might want to have a group of people that are all the same culture or race, ethnicity, if you will, and another group might be a different ethnicity, and you don't want them necessarily. It wouldn't make sense to have a lot of mixture there. So that's kind of why there's a little bit more detail there than might be obvious. But anyway, so you can add these settings. You can add new rows. You can add new tables if you wanted to. But this just determines how many people you'll have there, as well as what items are available for sale. And all the different building types have something similar. So the barber, who's kind of something of a healer, if you will, has some services that he can provide for that. And then you've got, again, a person table there with information there. The blacksmith, he's got, you know, there's the blacksmith and the apprentice, and then there's some services that they'll provide for as far as repair goes. And then things that they've made are available for sale. So I think we're probably running a bit long on the demo already. I think that covers a lot of the core functionality for the program. We'll be picking this up from this point and continuing on and creating our map. Maybe by now you've already figured out which module we're doing. If not, it'll be pretty obvious going forward. Please, if you get a chance, go ahead and subscribe to this. Make me look a little bit cooler to my daughters, and appreciate your support, and happy mapping. I hope that you guys are able to make some cool maps with these tools. Thanks.